Why did you cheat on your partner? Story 1. So simply put, she cheated on me, so I cheated back. Age, when story started 22. Age now 30. The story gets a lot more dramatic. I worked as a pizza delivery guy at the time. I came home from work one day with chocolates and flowers for her. We had been together for 5 years at this point, and she was screwing another guy in our bed. As soon as I entered my apartment and heard S noises, I knew I snuck into the frame of my bedroom door and witnessed the act with my own two eyes. They never even noticed I was there. I was so hurt by the situation, which I should have confronted head on, that I left my own house and went to my buddy's house and smoked a blunt. He told me I should let her know I caught her and see how she reacted, but I didn't. I was just trying to rationalize what I did wrong a lot. Several hours later, I returned home, gave her the chocolate and flowers, and continued like nothing was wrong. I was a fool. Needless to say, she got ready for her job, which was a night shift security guard, and left around 7 p.m. I sat there for several hours crying after she left. Around 10 p.m., our roommate called and asked if I could come up to her job and see what was going on with her car. The roommate is also my significant other's best friend. I went up there, figured out the issue with that POS car, and got her back to the house. The battery cable was messed up if anyone was wondering. After the roommate got home, she cooked dinner, spaghetti and garlic bread. I ate and sat on the couch. I proceeded to stay on that couch knowing what had occurred in my bed earlier during the day. About 300 a.m. I had the biggest emotional breakdown. I began crying to the point I could no longer breathe. As I sat in the dark crying, the roommate came and sat down beside me, pulled my head into her lap and rubbed my head. I'm not quite sure how long we stayed there like that, but I eventually fell asleep. I woke up the following day on the couch with my significant other waking me up. I proceeded to go through this day as well, holding in my emotions, like an idiot. After she left for work again around 7 p.m., I just sat there for hours. Eventually, that evening, I wrote a letter addressing my feelings and the cheating. It was about 3 pages long. The roommate came in shortly after 10 p.m. and did her evening routine, showering and all that. What happened next surprised me. As I lay on the couch, she came and began to talk to me. She stated she could tell something was wrong. So I told her about the cheating that I had witnessed and all that. I think she was in utter shock because she didn't say anything for like 10 minutes after I told her. This next part is the most shocking because I wasn't expecting it. It also should have been a huge red flag. The roommate asked me, "Do you want to F me to get back at her?" I never answered yes, I just jumped on her. We did many different things that night. I also had a new experience with girls who like to be choked. So here is the part where scent goes down. Still not the craziest part. I fell asleep on the couch after that night only to be woken up by arguing around 0700 hours. My significant other had gotten home, and her and the roommate were arguing. The roommate confronted my SO about cheating. The words that came out of the roommate's mouth next were stupid. "That's why I let your man fill me up while you were working, bitch." Oh, those are fighting words. Well, that is exactly what happened to fight. The fight carried on with me trying to break it up, to no avail. Entry was then made by 2 cops. Found out later that the neighbors called because they could hear it. Roommate got tased. So got tackled. Both of them went to jail. Several hours later, the roommate returned after her mother bonded her out. She told me we would talk about this situation later and left for work. My significant other then came by with her sister and dad around 11 p.m. that night and packed all her clothes and other property. I also had her take the bed because I didn't want it. She left that evening only saying, "I guess you know I'm breaking up with you." I just shook my head, yay, and she left. So we're gonna fast forward a little to about 8 months later. Little Tidebit roommate got pregnant from our one-night stand. The roommate was also still staying with me still. Roommate goes into labor, I take her to the hospital, and after 14 glorious hours of labor, we welcomed our beautiful daughter into this world. After my daughter was born, I went outside to smoke a cigarette, and across the parking lot, I noticed someone who looks quite familiar loading a baby in a pickup truck. I was about 400 feet across a parking lot at night. I shrugged it off. Sure, I was overanalyzing the situation. I had myself convinced it wasn't my ex. Well, I was wrong. About 3 months later, I get served with some civil paperwork from an attorney requesting I submit to a paternity test. After looking through all the paperwork with an attorney of my own, he was able to provide me with a date the child was born, which was a day before my daughter's birth. I knew then I did see her at the hospital that day. I took the paternity test. I was indeed the father. After a lengthy child custody case, I pay $420 a month in child support and get my son 2 weekends out of the month. I'm also married to the roommate and have a 7-year-old daughter and son now. I did indeed feel like a piece of Sate how that whole incident unfolded, but I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. A little advice. Communication in a relationship is key. Also, if you don't want no babies, use protection. Aldo don't cheat, it's just not good. Story 2. Because I truly had no idea what a healthy or functional relationship looked like. My parents were married for almost 30 years and had already started the cycle of cheating on each other well before I was born. My grandma used to tell me stories of being friends with my grandpa's girlfriends because she just wasn't toxic and jealous like other women. In the relationship where I cheated, I was being treated like garbage, financially supporting us both even though I was 10 years younger and a waitress, enduring a lot of abuse from a very broken man. I felt trapped in the same cycle I had watched my mom and my grandma live. I didn't really know better. A guy at work started paying attention to me, and I loved it. He was sweet and poetic and romantic, committed to helping his sister raise his niece, was out of the house and working instead of drinking my paycheck away and punching holes in my walls. A little harmless work flirting quickly escalated, and before I knew it, I was having a whole affair. I started to prepare myself to leave my boyfriend for my affair partner when I found out that my boyfriend had been cheating on me with anyone he could find on Craigslist, including stealing money from me to pay workers. Any guilt I felt for cheating evaporated right then. I threw all my clothes in a trash bag and drove to my affair partner's house, ready to start our new life together. He had another girl over, basically admitted that a lot of what he had said to me was because he thought I would never leave. All in all, it was a mess. If you're unhappy in your relationship, do the work that will either fix it or get you out. That new person is flawed too. They won't fix you or fulfill you, only you can do that. Story 3. I came here to try and understand what goes on in someone's head when this happens, because I've been cheated on surely and emotionally. Instead, I'm just left feeling sorry for the people in this thread. So many people in such a dark place pulling their partners down to an equally dark place. I hope everyone here that has cheated has grown and gotten help, and that they can pursue a healthy and fulfilling relationship after they've grown past that. For the people that have been cheated on, I'm sorry all of you went through that, and I hope it never happens again. Sometimes, it feels like something I'll never fully recover from, and other times I refuse to let past hurts ruin the chance of something good happening. So I want the people who have been hurt by their partners cheating to know, just because it's happened once doesn't mean it will again, and good things can still happen for you. Good. Story 4. Because my wife told me that she was no longer interested in having with me. She didn't want me having it with anyone else, and she forbade me from watching porn or masturbating. I still did the latter, but we could never discuss it, or she'd freak out. So to get my soul needs met by someone other than myself, for several years, a few times per year I paid a worker for a happy ending mage. This was still cheating, but I rationalized it as the mildest form of cheating possible. No chance of an STI, no chance of an unwanted pregnancy, no emotional involvement. I knew it was wrong, but at the time, I felt like it was my best choice out of several lousy choices. I realize now I should have just said at the time, I want a divorce. That's where we ended up anyway, and I would have saved myself, my wife, and our kids some needless pain over the years. By cheating on her and hiding it from her, I made it so much worse when she eventually found out. To cheaters on here, I would say, get out of your relationship. If you're cheating, you're clearly not happy. Do yourself and your partner a favor and just end it now before it all goes to hell. Story 5. Because I wasn't over my ex, and when she came knocking, I didn't value my new relationship enough and crossed a line I never will lower myself to cross again. You feel like Sant for years after it, really not worth it no matter how you try to justify it to yourself at the time. Story 6. Because she cheated on me first. I don't ever recommend such a stupid thing decision. It isn't worth it, folks. I normally considered myself strong and stoic before that. I don't have a foot to stand on now. It wasn't worth it. Story 7. Because I was too chicken sot to get a divorce, because I was wildly unhappy and too proud to go to therapy to fix the marriage. So I cheated, got caught, and have since been to a ton of therapy and am getting a divorce. Even though I'm happy to have this relationship in my rear view, cheating is my life's biggest regret. Story 8. Okay, this happened like 20 years ago with an ex I was around 22 years old, young gay, and he was around 40, I think. The age gap was something that always rubbed me the wrong way. I was constantly doubting the relationship, even kind of broke up a few times because of it. But then we came back together. We had been together like for 4 months by then. One night at the club, with some friends, I decided that if I was constantly doubting it, it was because it was something that I wasn't okay with, and decided to break up with him. He wasn't with me that night, so I decided to tell him the next day. Since I was already at the club and was going to break up with him, I thought it wouldn't matter if I met someone new. And I did make out with one of the club dancers, and then went to his place and had and everything. It wasn't until the next day morning, sobered up, that I realized I didn't want to break up with him. And even worse, I also realized that meant I had just cheated on him. Felt awful. I called him later during the day, told him everything while crying, aiming he'd just break up with me. But instead, he told me to meet somewhere public. He brought me a gift and told me he was okay with it. He understood what I was feeling, and it's just things that happen. I was confused by the reaction. We were together for a few months more, and then he broke up with me XD. Can't blame him. I was a horny mess by then. Ran into him a few times at some parties, and things were okay. He never stopped being nice to me, which I appreciate. Story 9. I felt an intimacy connection with someone which I'd never had before. In retrospect, it's one of the dumbest and stupidest things I ever could have done. It wasn't at all worth what it has now become. I've lost my entire family and have no respect from the people that matter most to me. 10/10 would not recommend and would never do again. I lost it all for something that never even really mattered. I had it all in front of me. I just refused to see it. Story 10, I've never cheated, but my ex was a S addict who ended up going to prison. There were so many excuses, blame shifting, pleas for forgiveness, therapy, etc., until finally he hit rock bottom and admitted to a S addiction. He ended up joining SAA, S Addicts Anonymous, and I ended up joining COASA, a 12-step group for people whose lives have been affected by another person's compulsive SOOL behavior. It completely changed my life and made me realize that there are people who cheat for one reason or another, and then there are people who cheat because it's their addiction. So it doesn't need a why. I thought I'd mention it here just in case somebody out there needs to see it. Story 11. Insecurity, poor self-image, and an inability to put aside morals in exchange for stroking my ego. I was bullied all throughout school, depressed, angry. So after school, when I started actually getting attention from women, I went nuts. My ego was exploding. I'd lie about where I was going, delete text messages, have alternate accounts, etc., etc. I thought I was sly. I wasn't. She knew. They always find out. I've changed a lot since, and thankfully we're still together. But it hasn't been without its trials and tribulation. There are times I see the hurt in her eyes, and I wish I could take it all back. But at the same time, I really don't think I'd be where I'm at as a person today if it weren't for that experience. It took a lot for me to realize just what type of person I actually was. And I woke up one morning looking in the mirror and didn't like the person who was staring back at me. It was like an out-of-body experience where I didn't recognize myself, but I knew I hated what I was looking at. It's taken a lot, and I make sure I tell her every day that I love her, that I'll forever be hers for as long as she'll have me. But if she were to tell me tomorrow that she's done, I wouldn't hold it against her. She's my best friend. She's helped me grow as a person and been way more patient than she had to be, and I wish I could take what I know now, go back in time and start all over, just so she wouldn't have that hurt and that doubt that I know is eating away in the back of her mind. She doesn't deserve it. Story 12. My first boyfriend in college was very controlling over my weight. He had a fat fetish and would track my weight to make sure I was gaining enough for him. I guess one night when I was with a friend, I just sort of cheated. It felt nice to not have someone call me a fat B asterisk touch the whole time we had S, so I broke up with him the next day. Never told him I cheated. Story 13. Because I wanted to have S with someone else. Nothing more to it. Not for revenge or disliking my partner. Just simply had the opportunity to F someone else and different SOOL experience. Story 14. He was abusive piece of Saint would threaten me all of the time with various son. He then cheated on me multiple times and called me crazy for accusing him of such things. We talked all of the time about how I felt. The problem was, he had a kid that I grew really attached to. Obviously, if I left, I would never see them again. And when I did break up with him, it was a fing disaster because he would never leave me alone and I was weak. It was a vicious cycle. And honestly, he never wanted to have S with me, probably because he was getting it from someone else. We also talked a lot about it. I was in therapy for so long during that relationship. I met someone who I felt really valued me. He never lied to me. He always was around when I called. I don't regret cheating. I know it hurt him and I don't care. I broke up with him then. He, of course, tried everything he could to get me back. Not because he loved me, but because he could control me. The worst part for me was when he called me with his kid, I almost broke down. But the guy I cheated on him with was with me every step of the way. Never got angry when I would have panic attacks about it. Never scolded me for small things. Honestly, me cheating probably saved my life. The guy I cheated with, and I've been together for almost a decade and married for 5 of those years, never cheated ever again. Story 15. I broke up with her. She disagreed. I had to block her because she got so abusive. Started dating this other girl and my ex found out and told everyone I cheated. New GF almost took her side. Story 16. I honestly don't know what got into me that evening. All my emotion regulations were gone. Heavy drinking, smoking, while having a lung disease and normal I don't, and had a sudden urge to hit on someone else. Regretted it a lot. It was only 2 seconds of kissing. Felt most guilty about the wanting to bang part. Story 17. Wife of 7 years cheated on me about a month ago. Out of the blue. For me, I was blindly in love, blind to the signals and the details. Point 2 children, house, everything. She was the love of my life. She destroyed me. I've been battling the ever-increasing urge to go out and have meaningless S with a friend of hers, with a family member of hers, or with my ex, which she despises with her guts. I know that if I write to any of those 3 girls, chances are they are going to let me have their way with them. Her friend always has sent me the looks, same as her cousin. My ex has spent the last 7 years writing me on Facebook about how the minute I divorce I can call her. I had her blocked her, of course, but I have since unblocked her. Last she messaged me was 5 months ago. She divorced her own husband about 6 months ago. I've been going to therapy and I am conscious about what I must and must not do. Today I found and liked a video from my ex on TikTok. She liked my videos and started following me. I had decided to message her today, but reading this thread is giving me plenty of reasons to not do it. I will try my best to remain strong, faithful to myself, my morals, my principles, to not stoop to my wife's level. Thank you to everyone here that is giving their honest opinions and life experiences. You never know whose life you may be touching with your words. To past cheaters, apologize from the bottom of your heart, apologize, leave nothing back, and disappear. You will never understand the damage you have done, but your sincere and complete admission of guilt and apology will do good for both you and your ex-partner. To wannabe future cheaters, don't. Grow a pair. Finish your relationship first, then go out with the other person, to people in my situation. Keep reading this thread, learn and process. I know it's hard. I feel a wrench in my chest, imagining my wife as the protagonist of every single situation posted here. It's been a month for me, maybe I will fail tomorrow, but understand the best is to really move on, heal our broken hearts, and be truly ready for our next adventure. Story 18. Because I needed to get away from an abusive relationship, and this was the only out I could see. The whole situation runs much deeper, obviously, but this is the Reddit edition. Worst period of my life. Story 19. This might be a long reply, so I apologize in advance. Throughout my relationship with my wife, she hasn't stuck up for me to her parents. Her father blatantly disrespects me to my face, and her mother has also said some pretty hurtful things about me. Another part of this is, my wife lives for the approval of her family, and not for the happiness that we should have. In 2019, I accepted a job that was supposed to be my stepping stone into the corporate world. Well, that job did not go as planned. I had a supervisor that would yell at me and berate me about not knowing how to do proper VLOOKUPs or pivot tables. Also keep in mind, I explained that I had no Excel experience in my interview. My mental health was at an all-time low. I had to talk myself into getting out of bed in the morning and then give myself another pep talk about getting on the elevator. I expressed how miserable I was to my wife and explained that I wanted to quit, and she didn't give me her blessing. She was too concerned with what her family would think of me. Months go by, and I finally had enough and gave my 2 weeks. My wife wouldn't look at me for months. I talked to my therapist about all of this and was told that my wife was not a safe space for me. After that revelation, I started to reflect on our relationship even more. My wife doesn't respect me. She tries to dissect every word that comes out of my mouth. When I got an extra job to make ends meet during lockdown, she complained that she didn't see me enough. There have been too many situations to list out here, but the summary is, I don't view my wife as a refugee. It additionally sucks because my own family doesn't talk to me, because I've tried to hold them accountable for the damage they have done to me in my childhood, and now they view me as the bad guy. Years of being like this has taken a toll on me as a man. It's to the point where I don't desire S from my wife. Here's where I answer the question. A few months ago, a woman named Samantha was hired at my company. It was on me to get her trained in our accounting program, and I loved every minute of it. She looked at me in a way that I don't believe any woman has looked at me. It felt nice to feel respected. Gradually, things became physical. It started out with playful rubber band flicking, to shoulder rubs. From shoulder rubs to sitting next to each other in meetings. Then to going out to eat on lunch breaks, hugs, a kiss on the cheek, booking hotel rooms before and after work. I'm not condoning my actions, but I felt so alive. I felt loved. I felt supported. Story 20. He cheated on me postpartum with my first daughter, and years later, I could not forgive or forget. I did not cheat to get back at him, but I did cheat. My current husband is who I cheated with. Long backstory summed up. My current husband and I met at 14, and he was the first person I slept with. He was running wild during his high school years, early 20s, and would not let himself date me because he knew he'd F it up. We talked on and off throughout the years. After I had my daughter and got cheated on, he actually messaged me one day and basically told me that he'd always been in love with me. I had always felt the same exact way about him, but never said it. I did not think he felt that way and was really surprised. Nothing really happened at that point. But a few years later, I kept telling my husband I was unhappy, couldn't forgive him, didn't want to be with him. He wasn't really open to divorce at that point, and I was done. My current husband messaged me randomly to tell me I was in a dream he had the night before. We pretty much started talking every day from that point on. I lived in a different state, so we FaceTimed a lot, and I got my plans together to move back to my home state, file for divorce, etc. I did make a trip to see him, twice, while I was getting things set up, and the first time I think we had 9 times in like 24 hours. I felt guilty, but I also had already told my husband I wanted to divorce, and he wasn't accepting, and I was no longer physical with him. I had an interview in person up here for a job a few weeks after, and stayed in a hotel with him for a few days. After that, I moved back with my kids, X moved back up here with his parents, I filed for divorce, and we were then officially together. I honestly don't regret it. I am so in love with my husband, and he is so in love with me. It took a lot of years and a lot of ups and downs for us to finally get to be together. Story 21, insecurity. Being young and horny. Stupidity. Had no one to blame but myself. She was a great partner, very loving. We all have things about our partners we wish we could change, but I think back on our time fondly. That chapter in my life that we wrote together was a beautiful time in life. It's easy to say now that I do things differently, but I'm not 100% sure. I think I still have a whole lot of growing up to do. I guess it's why I'm 40 and choose to remain single. That fact, and the fact that I refuse to give my heart to another. The fear of heartache is just too strong. Story 22. It's really weird reading how people on Reddit will treat those who have cheated like they deserve to be hung, and then read this thread and everyone be like, "Ya man, understandable." Story 24. I was seeing a guy, everything was great. We met when I was mid-20s and he was early 30s. I said from the start, "I don't want kids," he agreed. Time went on, we moved in together and got engaged. He started talking about kids. I said, "I still don't want kids." He said he had changed his mind and wanted kids with me. I reached out to mine, his parents, siblings, our friends, and everyone for advice. But they all said how great we were together, and how we would make great parents. I'd change my mind once I was pregnant, or when I held bub for the first time, push through, make it work, babies make a family. I saw a couple of therapists who wanted to deep dive into why I didn't want kids. I just didn't. I couldn't explain why. It was just never on my radar. Everyone kept telling us how good we were with their kids. I'd be a great mom, and he would be a great dad. Duh, I can hand them back. And how we were a great couple, meant to be a family, etc. I needed an out, a solid reason to end things. So I slept with a colleague, went home, told my finance. He wanted to work things out. Screaming match ensued where I let rip again that I didn't want kids. He kept saying I'd change my mind. I unequivocally said I wouldn't change my mind. I told him I couldn't guarantee I wouldn't sleep around in the future. We broke things off. The pain I caused him, it crushed me, but I couldn't keep going in that relationship with that pressure to have kids. 15 years later, we sort of keep in touch. A call every year or so just to touch base. The care for each other is still there. I don't have kids and don't regret it. He has had a couple of long-term relationships. About a year ago, he called me, and I've never heard a man sound so broken. Turns out he is infertile. Too late to fix things now, but if we had have known that and all the pressure was off, who knows what could have been. Story 25. Being a selfish whore. Also deep-rooted insecurity. Never had a substance abuse problem. Just like to have S with people I don't know too well. Story 26. Because we were living far away and he didn't make any effort to spend time together, I wasn't his priority and he was my first as well. I regret that I cheated, and after many, many years, I still feel guilty. Story 27. I got cheated on by my wife. Her reasoning was she felt lonely and disconnected. I asked why she didn't just leave or try to be honest with me. She said she was afraid of me. She was scared I would freak out and drain the accounts, take everything and run. So you know what I did? Exactly that. F you ho. Story 28. Because I wanted to. It's not rocket science. I wanted to be with another person, although I'm happy with my partner. Whoever says it was the alcohol or confusion or the moment is lying to himself. We cheaters want to do it. We are happy with our partners most of the time, but we are happier being with more people. Story 29. He SA'd me multiple times. I tried to leave for 3 years, from ages 16 to 19. Once, May 2022, he told me, "I won't let you leave me because of our S life." Like me being numb every time wasn't a valid argument. So I developed a crush on a friend. I didn't act on it, and it mainly faded. But when I finally broke up, June 2022, with my ex, 8 days later I slept with said friend, and my ex says I cheated because we were emotionally together. After the breakup, he kept texting and calling me with anxiety attacks and spent 3 days at my house, being vulnerable and stuff. I felt so deep for him, I couldn't be mad. After leaving, he spent a whole day calling me, and the next day I slept with my friend. My ex asked about him. I told him we slept together and he blocked me. Honestly, a very traumatic experience. Story 30. If I had a solid answer, I would probably not feel like killing myself on a regular basis. I fed up badly, admitted to it because I still loved her and took the consequences I deserved. Was I unhappy? Maybe. Was I scared of the future? Sure, who isn't? Did I ruin someone else's life because I was too much of a idiot to face my son head on and figure it out? Yay. Was I burnt out from the years of taking care of her? Maybe. But that's what you do when you love someone, and I should have been adult enough to talk about I'm sorry every day and have been for over a year now. I hate myself for it and probably will never forgive myself. And TBH at this point, IDK if I could date someone again? I thought I got over that must F new people part of my life. But no. The worst bit is she told me that I could have come to her and talked about wanting to F someone else. I just was too scared to bring that up, so I did the most genius thing and fed it up anyway. Don't make that mistake, kids. She probably will never see this, but I'm sorry. Words don't mean anything after breaking someone like that, but what else do we have? But words at this point. I probably should have let her take both cats instead of us separating them. She's my cat, but they got along together. Story 31S was no good, but liked her as a life partner. Ended up leaving her. Knew it was going to happen more and she didn't deserve that. Story 32. She made me feel like I was the worst man on earth. I was at a party while we argued over something petty over texts. One thing lead to another. I proved that feeling right. Story 33. After having children and specifically special needs kids, I was living an hour away for several months at a time. Communication with my ex became really stagnant, and I begged and begged for support. He came to visit maybe 5 times while I was with our sick kid. I received male attention from people who I felt like genuinely cared about my well-being and my child's. Our relationship sucked since then. Slept on separate beds, barely talked, worked opposite shifts, and things progressed. I feel horrible, and I learned a lot of things from this experience. I will never put myself in that position again. Story 34. Nobody cheats because they got drunk once. Alcohol isn't a magical aphrodisiac. I'm not going to go after anyone in this thread, because the question was asked honestly, but I see a lot of people still making excuses for themselves. Being an alcoholic is one thing, being drunk and hooking up with your gym crush is another, and neither are the alcohol's fault. Story 35. I only cheated on one partner in my life. Still to this day, I cannot explain why I did it. I was in a perfectly happy relationship with a very sweet girl and I fed her over. We wouldn't have stayed together anyways, but I still feel bad for making her question her sanity for a year. Story 36. I was being abused in my marriage. My ex-husband had me convinced I was bad and wrong in every sense of the word for the 3 years we were together. The first time someone saw real value in me as a person I just clung to, it became Sewell after that, but I think I was just starved for someone who didn't think I was the worst person ever. This was at the end of our marriage, the last 6 months of it. For the bulk of our relationship, I was faithful to him, and he made sure to emphasize that no one but him could even put up with my existence. So I guess when someone not only put up with me, but saw real value in me, I grabbed hold of it. It was a SETI marriage, and I'm glad I'm out. It's been almost 10 years, and I'm still living through the PTSD of that relationship. I never cheated before or since. Story 37. My own insecurities. I went to therapy, worked on myself a lot, learned to love myself and see my own self-worth outside of validation from men. I haven't had a relationship since, because I never want to do that again. So I want the next time I commit to someone to be absolutely sure I would never do that again. Story 38. Boredom, honestly. I have no real excuse. We started getting stale and only had S once a month if even am 29, M, and she's 30, F. I met a girl when I was with my partner and I fell for her. We spoke behind our partners' backs. I had wanted to break up with her for a while, but I didn't want to hurt her. Somehow I convinced myself that this was the better choice. I'm an insecure guy, and I use the attention of other women for validation, so I'm not as ugly or unlikable as I think I am. It never works as I always need another person's input to feed my insecurity. We broke up. I have a lot to work on. I'm not going to explain myself. It doesn't matter why. What I will say is this. I was a serial cheater. I cheated on at least 4 partners over the course of a few years. I felt like son about it, but convinced myself it was fine for XYZ reason, and they deserve someone better. Might as well let them know I'm a piece of shit, and they can go find someone better. Dumb thing mentality, yes. Something changed when I met my ex that loved him more than anyone before. I kissed someone else when I was away for school, and for the first time in my life, I felt real guilt about it. Like that gnawing, rabid guilt that is all-consuming. So I confessed to him that very evening, despite knowing I could lose him. We were 1,500 miles apart, and there's nothing I could do about it. But for Fing, once, I accepted the consequences of my actions, knowing damn well there was no excuse. I cheated because I was selfish. That's when things changed for me. I did a 180, started therapy, stopped lying completely, both to myself and others, and had discovered a newfound humility in my past action. Since then, he and I broke up because my actions had tarnished our relationship, and he never fully recovered. It was absolutely tragic, and it's been a while since we dated, but I'm still in love with him. I still think of him. But that hurt is a constant reminder to never be the careless cheater I was before. He deserves better, and I wish that for him. In the meantime, I continue therapy and finding happiness in the truth we are all humans, and sometimes we F up on a cosmic level. That doesn't mean we are permanently damned to a life of sottiness. If you want to change, you can. So to those of you who think every cheater deserves the guillotine, no questions asked, I invite you to reflect on your actions a little, and I hope that you realize we really are all just humans, doing the best we can, even those of us with a tainted past. Story 39. Because I'm a piece of saint, I watched my father cheat on my mother when I was a child. It tore me apart. I told myself I would never do that. I lost the girl of my dreams by cheating on her. I don't know what's wrong with me. I haven't been the same since I did that. Story 40. The craziest part to me about cheating is how common it is. I've seen couples that seemed like they were obsessed with each other, and so in love that it was annoying to watch and they cheated. I've seen the difference in men and women when they're out with their partner and when they're out alone. I've seen the flirtatious behavior even if there was no follow-through or flirty texts. Attraction is real, and I think people have a hard time trying their hardest to be good or committed when everything in their body is telling them to chase this good feeling of want and validation and the excitement and thrill of someone new. People act virtuous like, I would never. But it's the same people liking guys' pictures on social media or allowing men to be too friendly or flirty when their partner isn't around. My point is that even couples I never thought would cheat do in some form or fashion, and I think to some degree at some point in a relationship, if it's long enough, infidelity of some kind will happen. I think the problem with society is the shame that comes with it, and it's so hypocritical to see people on here sharing their stories and being bashed for it. You don't have to agree with other people's decisions or behaviors, but calling them pieces of set or shaming them when you're not perfect yourself is just frustrating to see. For context, I'm in the army, so I guess I see a different world. But a friend of mine said something that was mind-boggling to me at the time until I finally understood what he meant. He said, I love my wife with all my heart, and all my emotions are for her. I don't want to be with anyone but her. But I can't have S with just her, and to me, sleeping with other women is like masturbation because it's just no emotion. It sounded crazy. Then I realized what he was saying. There are a lot of people like that. Cheating isn't always malicious or intended to hurt people. To each their own, I guess.